Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Tomasz Parkola. I work for Poznań Supercomputing and Networking Center in Poznań in Poland. And in my presentation, I will talk about best practices in digitization. Although it may seem to be boring, I mean, formats, standards, and licensing, for me, it was really exciting work because it was really interesting to go into details related to formats which you can use in digitization or licensing which you can apply there. So let's start with general objectives of the work package which was related to best practices in digitization. So the main objectives, which also relate to the whole project, were to increase, for example, interoperability so that we can have, well, different components working together in a better way than currently. This involves preservation, accessibility, usability, but also simplified take-up of tools and also resources. And we wanted to, well, work in these areas by providing succinct recommendations, well, which can improve those aspects of or address those objectives. So before I will give you the details of particular recommendations which we developed, I'd like to tell you a bit about, well, the scope of our activities or the areas which we were focused on. So take a look at this simple digitization workflow, which I divided into really general, very general steps. So you have selection of objects, you have production of digital copies, where you have production of master files, you can do OCR there, you can also use linguistic resources there. Finally, you do preserve those outputs in some archiving system and also provide online access to those items. And you can use many formats and standards within this digitization workflow and for a particular step. Many are available, and, well, we wanted to select those which seem to be most applicable in this context from our perspective. And maybe I didn't mention that we were mostly focused on textual documents. And also, besides formats, you have tools, you have resources, and also in this context, you need to decide on which formats will you use to, for example, represent some resources, or which kind of license will you apply if you are a developer. So in general, we were working on two things. One was recommendations on formats and standards that are useful in digitization, and the other thing was, well, also related to digitization, but focused on licensing. General approach for both aspects was to use information about existing recommendations that are already there in the internet. You can access them. Many institutions provide those, for example, Library of Congress. We also investigated ongoing and emerging activities, so, for example, projects that are running currently, but also we were investigating current practices, which means that we did two surveys which were, well, asking people, stakeholders, to provide the feedback. And the feedback was really good. Beside Europe, I mean, the surveys were addressed to any cultural heritage institutions or commercial companies or any kind of stakeholders which are related to digitization, and the response was quite okay. It was even better for the Europe. I mean, we altogether got more or less 150 responses from different stakeholders, and this was really useful in the context of our recommendations. So let's go into details a bit. So for standards and formats, we will focus on three main areas: online delivery, long-term preservation, and also some advanced practices, like, for example, linguistic resources representation. And we provided recommendations on content and metadata. For content, we did recommendations on textual representation. Recommendations on on documents which are textual and also for still images, as well as for linguistic resources. And for metadata, it was about descriptive, structural, and administrative metadata. For the licensing schemes, so licensing which can be used and applied in digitization or for providing some information about or providing data, for example, to the users, we were focusing on both non-commercial licensing and commercial licensing, but it appeared that, in fact, in the commercial sector, it is quite difficult to identify some specific licensing schemes. It seems that, well, usually the licenses are really specific to specific companies. So different companies have their own policy and they use their special licensing for their work. But anyway, in the context of licensing, we did provide recommendations for software tools, for content, and also data and metadata. And just to give you an overview of our understanding of the content, data, and metadata, and also software. So the content for us is material in digital form. So for example, digitized book, map, or document available in digital form. Data and metadata are organized information. So for example, databases or descriptions of content, like metadata of digital objects that you publish in your, for example, digital libraries or museums, etc. And software is probably the most obvious thing. Computer readable instructions, so programming libraries, applications, and backend technologies. So now I will go through very quickly through all the recommendations just to give you an insight of what we identified and what we decided on. So for content and online delivery, so if you'd like to deliver online your content, then we recommend JPEG 2000 for still images and PDF, EPUB, or MOBI for textual resources. In case of long-term preservation, we recommend TIFF files for TIFF format for master files, and alternatively JPEG 2000. In the case of textual resources, TEI, PDFA, and alternatively UTF-8, encoded text, plain text file. And for licensing, Creative Commons. When it comes to data and metadata, again, online delivery, Dublin Core, which is, well, let's say, for general purpose, but also Europeana data model if you would like to cooperate with Europeana and provide, for example, metadata to Europeana from your portal. In the context of long-term preservation, we have the whole stack of different standards proposed here, METS, Premise, TextMD, Dublin Core, or MODS for metadata, but also for OCR results, Alto, or page format. If you'd like to provide your data or metadata online, you usually should provide it with some licensing model there. So for licensing, for general purpose, we recommend Open Data Commons or Creative Commons, once more time, or Europeana licensing framework if you, again, would like to cooperate with Europeana and provide information to them. And when it comes to so-called supporting technologies, but this is a kind of other section here. So we did provide some recommendations on how to represent linguistic resources. So we recommend TEI, CMDI, or LMF for encoding linguistic resources such as OCR dictionaries or information retrieval dictionaries. And if you'd like to use linked open data approach, then the starting point would be to use RDFA or SparkQL endpoint. And finally, we have software. Here, there are two aspects. First, licensing. We selected 3 licenses. The first one, GPL, is for strong copyleft. So if you would like to provide software or release software which will be until the end of the world accessible to other users, so that if anyone uses your software, will need to release his software which is built upon your components, will need to release it also on the same license. So it will be also freely accessible. The second is LGPL, so it's lesser general public license. It's between strong copyleft and permissive license. It means that, for example, if you are developing some software which can be used by others to create their own software, then if you will license your library, I mean your component, software component with this LGPL license, for example, a commercial company will be able to use it in their solution, and also other open source project as well. And finally, there is also Apache license, which is most permissive. So if you will release the software with this license, anyone can do with it whatever he wants. So commercial sector can use it, can modify it, and even can sell it. And well, this seems to be an interesting proposition for software which is developed using public funds, because, well, it then is open to all interested parties, all which provide money for public funding. And the other thing is supporting technologies in software. So we also think that it's important when you develop a tool and you provide the tool to your users to prepare software packages for at least Windows and Linux operating systems. So this was a very brief overview of our findings. I could explain it in details if you would like to hear more about specific aspects. I'm here for the break, and also we have a poster, so you can approach me and ask. So just as a summary, we used existing recommendation, current practices, so we did a survey among stakeholders, and we also analyzed ongoing initiatives and projects. Based on that, we provided two sets of recommendations, one on licensing schemes and the second on formats and standards, so that we have those succeed recommendations online on the Impact Center of Competence website. You can access them, you can read them. These are quite detailed documents which describe our findings and our arguments for selecting those specific formats. Thank you very much. I invite you to visit our poster, and yeah, that's all. Thanks.